it's a pleasure to be here to share our knowledge and also to learn from you as well. I would want to start with the African protocol by bringing the greetings from the Executive Director of FARA, Dr. Abugri, who has been working in FARA for almost 20 years now. And he is one of the advocates for knowledge management, for which FARA has been working around knowledge management a lot. So I bring you greetings from him. And also to say that it's an honor to be a collaborating partner in this project interfaces, together with the project partners, as mentioned by Tina. I think this is my second project in partnering closely with German institutions, especially ZEF and ZEF especially. The first project that I coordinated from FARA was the biomass web project. We still have the biomass net group that operates, and I was happy to see the publicity still on the walls of ZEF. So it's a great pleasure to be back here. So maybe our presentation is not going to be that academic. I know many of us here are from the academic background. We are going to share our experiences, having worked continuously at FARA and led the knowledge management agenda since 2017. We have gradually, tried to influence how knowledge management should be implemented within the agricultural research for development community in Africa. And that is what we are here to share. Dorcas, I will take the first part, talk about it. And then she is a beneficiary, maybe to use the word, to use that, of the initiative, the knowledge management for agriculture development agenda. And so I will try to give a little background of knowledge management and of FARA, and then the context within which we work, and that will help us to appreciate why knowledge management is a key component of the agricultural development agenda in Africa. So at some point, Dorcas will come in to share her story, and then I'll come back to conclude the presentation. We look forward to be able to make this presentation within an hour. So we hope that we will be able to achieve that. So without providing any details, knowledge has moved to the center stage of global sustainable development agenda. The Knowledge for Development Partnership has developed the knowledge management for development agenda as part of the documents for implementing the sustainable development goals. So there are guidance on how knowledge management should be run to support the achievement of the sustainable development goals. It's become very important as a vehicle for achieving sustainable development, and it's very obvious in many projects that without knowledge, decision making becomes very difficult, and we know that it will continue to play a very critical role even beyond the sustainable development goals ends in 2030. We also know that economies are striving to be successful and competitive. And so there's a need to pay attention to knowledge, how it is created, how it's transferred, and how it is preserved. And those are very important principles that guides the way we operate knowledge management, just not in Africa, but also globally. Now, I want to just zoom into the Knowledge Management Performance Index. There's a group that does the Global Knowledge Index. They do an extensive study on how knowledge is being utilized or how it's being created and preserved within the global space. And the latest one that I am privy to is the 2022 report, and it measured 132 countries which the United States emerged as the overall highest index with 68.4. Now, the indicators that index looks at is on education, innovation, information and communication technology. In Africa, Mauritius is the highest ranked African country, and it performed well it moved up from the 2021 ranking to 49th position, and it has 49 score. Botswana became second, and it's 74th in the world. It also fell in terms of its performance. Now it follows by Tunisia, South Africa, Morocco, Cabo Verde, Namibia, Egypt, Kenya, and Ghana in that order. So if you look at things, even though the countries across the sub-region or the African region, they are distributed, but the performance is not very good globally. Ghana, for instance, where I come from, is first in Africa, but the score is even below the average, 37.8. And we know the World Economic Forum has been also working around reporting on knowledge issues globally, and it reported that only 2.6% of global scientific knowledge is what is related to Africa. Now, it's not surprising that Sub-Saharan Africa averagely contributes just 0.4% of its GDP to scientific research. And this is one of the studies that the African Union is one of the indicators in the African Union biennial review report. It tries to partly measure some of these things. And it's 0.4 is woefully inadequate because the CAADP requires that every country should at least contribute, they said 10% of the GDP to scientific research. But that is very unfortunate that we are at this level. The majority of West African countries spend less than 0.25. So even within the African context, West Africa is worse. I think the only country that has performed, that has been doing well a bit consistently has been Rwanda. And so putting all this in proper perspective requires that an institution like the Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa, which is the apex continental institution responsible for coordinating and advocating for research, agricultural research for development in Africa, and an institution that is mandated to convene and facilitate partnerships, both within Africa and across the world, must be able to lead the agenda for knowledge management within the continent. And so we have leveraged on the structure that we have, working with the various partners up to the country level to help harmonize the thinking around how knowledge is delivered within the AR4D space in Africa. So what you are seeing on the screen now is just how the structure that helps the AR4D institutions in Africa to deliver up to the last man. At the continental level is FARA, which is the Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa. And we work through 4 sub-regional offices. The one for West and part of Central Africa called CORAF, with headquarters in Dakar. The one in Southern Africa, hosted by SADC in Gaborone. And the one for Eastern Africa and part of Central Africa called Asareka, hosted by the government of Uganda, and their offices in Entebbe. And the last one, which is still a bit younger, is the Northern Africa sub-regional organization called NASRU, and is hosted by the Agriculture Council of Egypt. Now, overall, we use this architecture to reach out to the country, to reach out to stakeholders at the country level. And so all the 55 countries in Africa, we reach out to them through this architecture. Now, we know agriculture has to do with many branches. And so FARA even though plays a convening role, they are specialized institutions that delivers on certain key areas within the agriculture space. One of it is the Africa Forum for Agriculture Advisory Services, AFAS, that is responsible for advisory services. The Regional Universities Forum for Agriculture, RUForum, which deals with capacity development, and the Pan-African Farmers Federation, which is also a continental body that has branches that reaches out to the country level. So it is a partnership, and this partnership requires robust and coordinated knowledge management agenda. And that is why we are called the Africa Agricultural Research, Innovation and Education Institutions. FARA and all these partners have over the years generated, we've generated very strong both physical and online presence. And so at the moment, we are talking about over 14 million direct and indirect reach in terms of the systems that we use, the channels we use for delivering or for engagements in disseminating and also to getting feedback from stakeholders on knowledge that is being produced. This, as you can see, we use different channels from typical knowledge management platforms like databases to the social media pages. Now, we also operate communities of practice because this is a network. And once you have a network of this nature, you need to have strong communities that operate within. And so for typical AR4D practitioners, we have a network of over 40,000 stakeholders that engage on different topics at any point in time. And you are welcome to join the Continental Community of Practice by just searching for FARA Africa Community. You will find it online. I just want to add again that our stakeholders have always been very diverse. And so even though we lead the research agenda, we also work closely with the partners, as I mentioned, to ensure that we reach out to almost all the stakeholders. And so within the research and academia, which is the largest audience that we deal with, they're about 40%. And then the rest for the various stakeholders like policy, like extension and farmers and private sector. We work within the framework that guides either globally or within the African context. So within the African context, almost all initiatives in Africa works within the AU Agenda 2063. Now, we have been, the architecture I mentioned earlier have been at the forefront in implementing the KAADP Malabo, which is supposed to end in 2025. And its associated initiatives like the Science, Technology and Innovation Strategy for Africa, and other ones that has to do with industrialization and so on and so forth. Now, almost all the national programs and programs that are run by the CGR and other partners at the country level are expected to contribute to this agenda for Africa and to the Sustainable Development Goals. So collectively, in 2017, where the knowledge management became a topical issue for engagement at the continental level, our stakeholders, and if I say our stakeholders, the National Agricultural Research and Innovation Systems, like the Ministry of Agriculture, the National Research Institutes, the extension systems, together through consultations with over 42 countries, knowledge management was identified as a key driver, and FARA was expected to lead that continental discussions. How did we think we could go about knowledge management? We realized that it will require a lot of resources, but we also have the network that we can leverage on. So we believe that, or we came to a conclusion that the knowledge management that we would deliver to the continent will not just be about collecting the knowledge, but also connecting people to that knowledge. And so considering that knowledge is in two forms, explicit and tacit, And we also know that tacit knowledge is one of the hardest to get. It's not easily found in the books, the computers. And so you have to create mechanisms to ensure that people are engaging in order to tap into the tacit knowledge. So we operate within the knowledge push and knowledge pool principle, where we use the ask and learn, the ask and tell approach to work around the tacit knowledge, or to bridge the gap between the tacit knowledge and the explicit knowledge. We use this principle, we use the push and pull knowledge principle to help us be able to generate the right knowledge to the right people at the right time. And this is one of the basic principles of knowledge management that any knowledge manager works around. The right knowledge, the right people at the right time. So with that, how do we operationalize knowledge management at the FARA level? We have 4 key components, or at the continental level in Africa. We have 4 key components within which we operate knowledge management in Africa. First, and I'll start from the bottom right, is what we call the Observatory for African Agriculture, where we operate a knowledge hub, which is called the FARA Data and Information Systems. And the key principle is to advance African agricultural knowledge through data-driven insights. We have been building this since 2018. And so if you go online, datainforms@faraafrica.org is the Observatory for African Agriculture. And we have been working around improving it, day by day. Secondly is my top left, learning through knowledge products. We have been advancing co-creation as the principle, using multi-actor partnerships to develop knowledge products. And almost all the knowledge products we develop are based on these principles. We also create opportunity for our scientists or researchers to be able to publish even knowledge that does not necessarily have to go through a typical peer review academic journal, so that even indigenous knowledge can have space for publication once the review team are able to validate the content. We are at the forefront of ensuring there's strong collaboration and engagement, and we do this both online and offline. Online, mostly through the communities of practice, which is powered by what we call the D group, and the offline version where we have physical meetings like the African Agriculture Science Week, which we organize every 3 years, which brings together almost all the key players in Africa onto the table to discuss topical issues. We also have the Science and Partnership Agriculture Conference, which is more tailored towards the EU-AU partnership on FNSSA, the Food and Nutrition Security for Sustainable Agriculture, and key partnerships like brokering knowledge partnerships with institutions that we can learn and share among ourselves. And the last one, which I'll be talking about it a bit more into detail, is strengthening the knowledge ecosystem. And that is where the agenda for the knowledge management for agriculture development comes to play. All these principles, or all these thematic areas of knowledge management, is characterized by the priority setting of both FARA, the continental frameworks, and our partners, as well as creating strong partnerships to advance knowledge in Africa. We deliver this through a team, and this is a team that, this is the expected team, knowledge management unit at FARA. The empty ones are vacant positions, not because they are under recruitment, but because we have no resources to recruit for those positions yet. But those that with pictures demonstrate the staff that are on site and working with me within the knowledge management team. Knowledge management is a huge agenda for FARA. And so we rely also on the knowledge management community of practice, which we call them the knowledge management fellows, interns, consultants, sectorial knowledge management enthusiasts, like maybe an agronomist who has a lot of passion doing things around knowledge management. Then we try to get the person to connect to the knowledge services that we have, so that the things that are happening around his media sector can be included, or can get a lot of outreach from the knowledge management systems. We rely very much on communities of practice, and we have very strong communities of practice, largely made of certified knowledge managers from the countries, representing the national research institutes, in some cases representing the ministries, depending on how the structure of the national research institute is in a country. And so we have about 55 of them operating from the NAS, from the CGR, and connecting to the African Union Commission. I mentioned about the FARA Data Informs, which is the knowledge hub of FARA. And so I'm not going to go into much details, but the presentation will also be shared just for information. This is the knowledge hub. And these 4 key areas are what the knowledge hub seeks to achieve. Now, we have operated it since 2017. We developed it with Drupal. At that time, it was Drupal 7. We have gotten to a stage where we have to upgrade. So we are this year, by the end of the year, we would have upgraded the data informs to provide more modern tools, including AI and other things that will help us to deliver on decision support products for the continent. We operate this system largely using linkages, recommender systems, and the principle of interoperability. Interoperability in the sense that we know we don't have the resources to do a lot of things. So if we know that maybe ZEF has a database that provides good content to Africa, we get into partnership with you. We connect it to the data informs so that African partners can easily be able to access it. And that is how we operate this. In the PARI project, FARA implemented PARI with ZEF. There we developed the technology database. That is one of the platforms that is expected to be integrated into this platform as PARI comes to an end. We also use this platform to take on board projects that are ending, that they have very good resources. That doesn't have to go back to the shelf. So we use the Knowledge Hub to ensure that we take on board some of these things that are relevant to Africa, using their mechanisms for review. And this is how the platform looks like. You have a number of databases within it, but I'll just highlight just 3 of them. The expert profile, which takes, it registers expertise in Africa. The funding opportunities, where we try to put together a number of funding opportunities to the database. And then the agriculture institutions in Africa. With this, under this database, you can have access, or you can find contacts to almost every Africa agriculture institution, whether it's in academia, it's in research, it's in the private sector. We have tried to connect them onto this platform. So you can search, maybe you want AR for the institution, or you want national research institutions in maybe Ghana. It will help you pull out all the research institutes in Ghana, and also give you the contacts to whoever you want to engage. So we have tried to work around this very strongly, and we keep on trying to improve it. And so if you look at it, you find anything that you think you can give us feedback to improve upon, it's always welcome. Fast forward from 2018, in 2020, when we continued on the agenda to help Africa to deliver knowledge management in a more harmonized manner, we gathered experts in Africa, including the Knowledge for Development Partnership with one Professor Andres, who operates the Knowledge for Development Partnership. It's a partnership that almost all knowledge management experts across the world are connected to. So we try to engage them a bit more, and also to bring the African experts to think about how to reposition knowledge management in Africa. And it led us to what we call the Akusobo Integration Agenda, where we're able to develop a knowledge management for agriculture development framework that uses the knowledge management processes and links it to how knowledge leadership and governance, as well as monitoring evaluation, would help us to either deliver knowledge management at the organizational level, the sectorial level, or even at the SDG level. Also, we identified 7 thematic areas, which is very important, and these areas are areas that we think we can integrate in Africa. And once we integrate, we will be able to work together in a more coordinated manner to develop or to build a knowledge ecosystem that is more strong. And so all these guidelines were provided to the stakeholders, or is being published online, and stakeholders are using it. On the last part of it, on catalyzing innovation through collaboration, we use the knowledge management for culture development agenda. And as I mentioned at the early stage, that we operate an annual program called the Knowledge Management for Culture Development Challenge, where joint continental partners have come together, including the African Union Commission, to deliver or to train, and also to ensure that the knowledge management agents at the country level are able to be capacitated, or even at project level are able to be capacitated to deliver on knowledge management. And so it's always an educational program that spans over 3 months. And within the 3 months, which Dorcas will be talking about it very soon, it takes, the participants go through knowledge management courses at the beginner level to the advanced level. They are facilitated, or they are taught how to organize knowledge cafes, so that they can, the principle of co-creation, collaboratively creating knowledge products, they can learn those skills to develop, to advance the knowledge management agenda in Africa. So in 2021, we were able to develop a knowledge management framework that is currently being utilized by the African continent. We have also supported, we've worked with 28 countries to develop their national knowledge management strategies and 21 knowledge management policies. The participants go through the 3 months course, and when they are successful in delivering on all their required products, they are awarded certificates as knowledge managers for sustainable development. And this is accredited by Makerere University Business School and the International University of Namibia, as well as the Knowledge Management Academy in Vienna. The findings, normally, the products which Dorcas will be talking about, are always presented at a knowledge management conference. And for this year, the conference has been scheduled for 29th to 31st in Kigali in Rwanda. And this is an initiative. This is how the agenda looks like. It provides, we have been able to provide guidance on how to deliver knowledge management in 10 thematic areas, like knowledge partnership and agenda, knowledge inclusion programs like issues of gender and disability, knowledge awareness program, and a host of them. These are just some of the knowledge products that have been developed. So they are knowledge briefs that explains all the 10 thematic areas. So if you want to, let's say, start a knowledge management awareness program, we provide 3 key examples of how to go about it. We have a very strong knowledge management partnership framework with all these institutions in Africa. And this is just a distribution of how we build capacities in Africa at the national level, 28, the AUC, the CG center level, the youth network level, the continental level, and regional levels. And all these 55 have been certified as knowledge managers for sustainable development. These are just some of the pictures of those who have graduated. So Dorcas and co are also going through, and their graduation will be in July during the conference. This is just something Dorcas will talk about a little bit, because this is what I was referring to. So to conclude, the intended impact of the knowledge management for culture development agenda, the challenge and the conference, is to be able to provide qualified knowledge managers, agents, to drive the process of transforming knowledge society and knowledge-based agriculture. Secondly, it's to be able to get the capacity within the continent that allows for successful implementation of knowledge management strategies and programs. And to also create a stronger knowledge sharing and collaboration network in Africa based on vital knowledge management community that also connects to the global space. And also to provide advanced knowledge policies and strategies at the political level. We've developed a number of policy briefs that informs policy on how we want to go about knowledge management. And I think Dorcas will give an example of that. And also to advance innovation and problem solving in complex, challenging issues collaboratively. And that's the principle that we have used in the knowledge management challenge, and to better help in the achievement of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So at this point, I would allow Dorcas to share her story, having been part of it. Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to the people that are joining online. So yet again, because Benjamin said hi, my name is Dorcas Sanginga. I am a PhD candidate at the Horticultural Department of the University of Bonn, but of course, I'm a member of the Interfaces Project. So today I'm going to share my experience. It's more like a story. I'm not going to be too technical. Yeah, my experience throughout this learning experience. So we started in April, and it's still ongoing, but not like the way we started. It was a bit advanced, and yeah, we had to show up every day. So I'm going to tell you a story about interfaces, because most of us here don't know interfaces. So interfaces is a project that supports other regional projects that have activities in Africa. So we aim to support them in their endeavor to make a change through sustainable land management. And they do research with the local people. And in interfaces, we care about impact. So we are impact driven. How do we do that? We engage all the stakeholders along the value chain. Anybody who has knowledge about what we want to do, like the impact we want to drive, we engage them in a process of co-creation of knowledge. So we get their needs, their vision, their priority about what matters to them, because we cannot sit here in Germany and do research for them. We do not only limit ourselves to these people, we also go to the fields, we talk to the farmers. And in interfaces, we are gender responsive, yeah? So we do not only talk to the male farmers, we also talk to the female farmers. Like, we are socially inclusive in interfaces. The 4 regional projects that interfaces is supporting, and we are financed by the Federal Ministry of Education and Research of Germany. So all these projects, we get our money from them, yeah? And we do sustainable land sustainable land management related activities in West Africa, in Ghana, Senegal, Togo, Benin, and in East Africa, in Kenya and Namibia. So these 5 projects, there are some 5 candidates from the 5 projects that went through this knowledge management process, and we are working on some technical thematic issues that were identified within this project, so that we can help the 5 projects in their scaling ambitions, because they have certain innovations that they are working on. And these activities, they are related to gender, some innovations like microdosing, integrated soil productivity management, which is the one I am involved in, and also crop selection for climate change, which Kizito is doing, is also here today with us. So these are the 5 candidates. You can see my face there, and Kizito is also there. Yeah, so it's quite diverse, and you see it's balanced. There are female people there too, and the men. So yeah, with diverse background, people doing some social sciences, the agronomists, and so on. So these 5 candidates are interfaces, but for the challenge, we had to join other candidates, and we identified some issues, yeah, in Africa, the issues that we need to work on to advance knowledge. And we joined other members from other countries in Africa to work on some teams. For example, we had to work on capturing indigenous knowledge. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. We also worked on knowledge hubs, knowledge linkages for some thematic communities, and also knowledge inclusion, whereby we were trying to see how knowledge can be inclusive. How do we make sure that all the people, like the women, the people with disabilities, how do we make sure that knowledge gets to them? So these were in form of cafes. I'm sure some of us also attended this, and they were really excellent because through the FARA D groups that Benjamin talked about, we shared this news, and we had a massive, like, people turned out. We had like more than 300 participants attending each of these cafes. And because it's co-creation of knowledge, we are going to use their knowledge to create something really meaningful. We do not just take that for granted and leave it in like in our laptops. We are going to create something that would make sense, and they're going to be acknowledged. So whatever we gathered from these cafes, we need to develop some products. So each group has to develop 1 or 2 or maybe 3 products. So some groups will develop a policy brief, some will do articles, some other will do knowledge briefs, but this is just for the group. Now each participant has to develop a product. Some people that joined because their organization asked them to be in the challenge. The organization found that they need a knowledge management strategy because they don't have one. And these are the National Research Institute, the CG Center, we have IIT and ILRI, and also WFP. As for the interfaces candidates, we are working on technical challenges. It's not like the other candidates, because here we are working on innovations, the things that I mentioned before. I'm going to talk about my group, the group I joined, and Kizito also was part of it. We worked on capturing indigenous knowledge. We are all aware that indigenous knowledge is not recognized in science, in policy and practice. And we tried to understand this based on people's experience. And you can see also in this group, we have people from West Africa, Central Africa, the Southern region. So people brought experiences from all over the place. And we have pioneer of indigenous knowledge globally, Sarah Cummings from Wageningen University. She was also with us, helping us in this process. And also Andri Rasso is also a pioneer of indigenous knowledge in Africa. So during the cafe, we had some questions that we shared for discussion, and we're trying to uncover some practices, good or bad ones, that respect or damage indigenous knowledge. And we also asked the people to share their vision. If a policy brief is developed, what's their vision, in order to bridge the gap between science policy and practice to recognize indigenous knowledge. So we also had some recommendation for the various stakeholders in this order. We got so many answers and experiences. All that we are going to use it to develop a policy brief that we are going to share, and everybody in this group is going to be a co-author of that product. So it's going to go through a process, being reviewed, and the people are going to be acknowledged for that. So each group had this part, so I'm just going to talk about one group as an example. But for my case, for my PhD, I'm working on an innovation called Integrated Soil Fertility Management. ISFM, I would call it. So if you hear that word, that's the innovation. It's the application of organic and inorganic fertilizer together, good seeds, improved seed, and also you have to find the condition of your soil, your socio-economic condition, so you tailor this practice to that context. So in ISFM, if you look at this graph here, you see that organic fertilizer is what really makes your agronomic efficiency go a bit high. So if you don't really apply organic fertilizer, it's like you're just doing nothing. You're wasting your resources. And this is a problem because farmers don't really want to do this. They find that it's tedious, like it has a lot of work, even to make the organic fertilizer. They're not interested because it takes long for them to see the result. But it's really beneficial because in the long run, it makes your soil alive if your soil is degraded, and you start to see the benefits of it. after some years, but they just want to something quick. And the problem with the challenge that I identified here. Thank you. Yeah, sorry. The challenge I identified here: farmers have a resource that is readily available to them. It's crop residue after harvest. They have them, but they use it for other practices. For example, the female would use it to cook. They use it for fuel. The male would use it for housing, or maybe they feed their livestock, and that creates some conflicting interests. And the soil will not get what it needs because they will leave. The soil is also a major stakeholder in this process. So every stakeholder has to get something. And that's something that I am hoping we can address. Yeah. Every stakeholder has to get something. Yeah. So with this problem, the rationale of doing this challenge is because I want to empower farmers to have organic fertilizer. So ISFM, we can really do ISFM the way it should be. And because farmers have crop residue already in their field, we need to find mechanisms or strategy to address these competing interests. So each, like the female, the male, and the soil would have what they need. So with that, I know that there's nothing new. This is already done. I mean, farmers, they know how to do this. They have this knowledge, but it's not captured anywhere. So I want to assess or maybe get these successful models from the people that manage their crop residues, and the challenges with each practices, the needs, the tools they need to use to manage their crop residue, so that I will be able to develop a manual for them on how to effectively manage their crop residue in a very easily understandable way, with some graphics, not too scientific, not too complicated, but of course, some multimedia documents or resources, like I would say maybe some voice audio recordings that they will put on the radio, for example, before the cropping season ends. It can be broadcasted so they know, like they can hear, we can do this when we harvest our crop. And also for the scientific community, because they need to know, they need to advise the farmers with the extension officers, maybe a blog or an article. I have to think about that. So all these products, I need to, like Kizito is also working on something like this, and the other 5 candidates, each on their specific topic. So we are going to have our own cafes in July, second week of July. You are all welcome. We share our information on FARA interfaces, online handles. So the good thing about these platforms is because I'm going to have a big outreach. For dissemination, it's good because it's not only going to be limited to my network. All the people in this KM community, the FARA-D groups, and the people representing the countries that I'm working on. For example, if I share to Kizito is from Benin, my document would also go to Benin. So this is good. So, and there are so many communities of practice that I can share it to. So I'm going to end here. We are going to present this work in Kigali, as Benjamin said. And after that, we are going to be certified as knowledge managers. And of course, we are going to be part of a big community, which is always good. Yeah. Right. Thank you very much for listening to me.
No, that's fine. Thank you. So just thank you, Dorcas. Just a minute to conclude.
Well, 1 minute.
Yes, 1 minute to
What
conclude.
German minute?
Yes. So we have. I just want to highlight that the knowledge management for agricultural development agenda has become a model that we are using to implement in different scenarios. So we don't need to know details of the technical area. All we need is to help the technical person to understand how to use the knowledge management approaches, tools, to develop something from their area that is very understandable. We also want to highlight that a number of countries already have been supported to develop their national knowledge management strategies and policies. And so initiatives that are coming up can look forward to these countries to see how their implementation can align with their strategies. And the knowledge management community of practice is a very important tool. We have been developing it. We have 55 by the end of July. we would graduate the new ones and they will be admitted into the community, and we would be having like maybe 70 or above. And we also, the linkage we have with the academia, where we work closely with some of the universities to even develop courses, like the university, the Makerere Business School, they have established the Knowledge for Development Center, and the curriculum is informed by feedback from this community. And we see that as a very good tool for bridging that research or academia and practice. So thank you very much. Just to recognize the partners also in this that have made this possible. Thank you for having us.